You have never actually met the person you cannot stop thinking about. You are standing with a construction built from your own longing. You have replayed conversations they never had and defended a phantom. You loved a projection so completely that the actual human before you became irrelevant. What you call chemistry or destiny is what Carl Jung diagnosed a century ago: projection. You take your disowned parts, the tenderness, the wildness, the depth, and hang them on another human like a coat on a hook. Then you love the coat. You were never seeing them. You were staring into a mirror you refused to recognize. You are here because the pattern has repeated too many times. You finally suspect the problem isn't their unavailability or tragic mistiming. It is structural in how you see. For years, you have drawn a shape around every person you've romanticized without once looking at it directly. Look at it now. Read that line again. Jung wasn't just describing romantic obsession, he was describing how humans encounter reality. You walk through life projecting unlived possibilities onto others. When they matched the script, you called it love. When they broke it, you called it betrayal. Neither moment was actually about them. Projection is not a perceptual mistake, it is a defense. Outsourcing your material protects you from holding it yourself. Your romantic obsession is your psyche, preventing you from meeting a piece of yourself that would change everything. Look at them without flinching. They are not the answer to your longing, but its location. A specific hidden part of you drives this. I won't name it until the end. Grasp it too soon, and you will simply project it again. By the end of this, you will understand why this loop repeats with different faces. You will diagnose projection in real time, distinguishing an actual person from your own unclaimed self. You will begin what Jung called individuation, ceasing to consume others as fuel for a fantasy. This is not about becoming cold, it is about becoming permanently awake. If these ideas resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more top-tier content. Also, drop an "I see" in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. Every time you become fixated on another person, you are not looking at them. You are looking at a screen you have placed in front of them, and the movie playing on that screen is being projected out of your own psyche. This is the first thing Jung understood, and the first thing he watched people refuse to accept. The mind cannot tolerate the raw, unfiltered fact of another consciousness, so it does what minds always do when reality is too large. It constructs a manageable version, and it lives inside the construction as if the construction were the thing. You have built this screen 100 times in your life without knowing you were building it. You saw a stranger across a room, and within 30 seconds, you had assembled a story about who they were, what they wanted, what wounds they carried, and what role they were going to play in your life. You had not exchanged a single sentence with them. You had not seen a single unposed expression on their face, but the story was already complete. That story was not perception. That story was projection. Your mind had reached into its own basement, pulled out a template, and cast this human being in a role they had never auditioned for. The screen is made of your material, not theirs. Every quality you attribute to the person you are romanticizing, the depth, the mystery, the specific brand of intensity you cannot stop thinking about, is a quality that already lives inside you, unclaimed and unrecognized. This is why the connection feels so uncannily specific. It feels specific because it is specific. You are not describing them. You are describing the exact shape of what you have been unable to give yourself. And here is the sentence you will want to sit with. If you were to make a list right now of the qualities that make the person you keep romanticizing feel special, you would be looking at a diagnostic map of the pieces of yourself you have not yet integrated. You have called this map love. Jungian psychology calls it projection. Both are true. But only one of them will still be true in 10 years, and only one of them will actually change your life if you learn to read it. Which brings us to the specific mechanism that determines what you project and why. A mechanism that begins in the parts of yourself you were taught very young that you were not allowed to hold. There is a precise reason you become obsessed with certain people and indifferent to others. You do not project randomly. You project with pinpoint accuracy, and the accuracy is diagnostic. The person you romanticize is always carrying in some visible form a quality that you disowned in yourself so long ago that you no longer recognize it as yours. Carl Jung theorized that every human being enters adulthood with an entire half of themselves, consigned to what he called the shadow, the reservoir of unlived qualities that were forbidden, punished, or simply never mirrored back to them in childhood. That shadow does not go away. It waits. And when it meets a suitable person on the outside, it projects itself onto them with the full force of a lifetime of suppression. Consider the specific qualities you find magnetic in the person you cannot stop thinking about. If they seem confident, you likely disowned confidence somewhere in your development. If they seem wild, you likely disowned wildness. If they seem quietly powerful, you disowned your own quiet power. If they are unavailable, you disowned your own permission to be unavailable. This is not coincidence. This is the exact way projection works. The magnetism is not a signal about them. It is a signal about the missing half of you that is trying to be reclaimed and has chosen this human as the temporary vehicle for the reclamation. Individuation is the process of removing them from the vehicle, and here is the private math nobody has articulated to you before. Every hour you have spent thinking about them, replaying scenes, decoding their behavior, writing the imagined conversations you would have if the timing were finally right, has not been an hour spent with them. It has been an hour spent with your own shadow in a costume you did not know you had designed. That is why the obsession feels so intimate. It is intimate. It is the most intimate encounter of your life. The only mistake you have made is believing the intimacy was with another person, when the intimacy was with a version of yourself you have never been given permission to meet. You may feel some discomfort as this lands. Some of you are noticing quietly that the specific person you keep romanticizing has been offering you almost nothing, and that the entire relationship has existed inside your own mind. Some of you are noticing that you have spent months or years in an emotional relationship with a projection that the other person has never even known was happening. If that recognition arrived just now, do not turn away from it. This is not shame. This is precision. And precision is what allows you to see for the first time that the wound you have been trying to close by winning them has never actually been about them at all. And this is why the pattern repeats. You end one obsession, and within months you find another person carrying the same profile of unclaimed qualities, and the projection reassembles itself onto them. Different face, same shadow, same story. The people change, the screen stays. And there is exactly one thing that dissolves the screen for good, one shift in how you relate to your own inner material that ends the projection loop for the rest of your life. And it is the shift most people spend their entire adulthood refusing to make. The reason they refuse it is what we are going to look at next. There is a specific, hidden cost to idealizing another human being, and you have been paying it for years without seeing the invoice. Every time you place a person on the psychological pedestal of the projection, you are not just distorting them, you are diminishing yourself, because the qualities you are attributing to them, the depth, the strength, the beauty, the wisdom, are qualities that could only have that magnetic pull if they secretly belong to you. The moment you decide those qualities live in them and not in you, you have made a trade. You have handed them the parts of your own psyche that you were meant to develop, and you have kept only the version of yourself that is small enough to have handed them away. This is what idealization actually is. It is not admiration. It is the outsourcing of your unlived life. Every hour you spend thinking about how extraordinary they are is an hour you are not spending becoming the extraordinary version of yourself whose existence they are only reminding you of. This is why romantic obsession leaves you feeling smaller than it found you. It has to. The mathematics require it. You cannot grow while you are shrinking to make room for a screen you built out of the parts of yourself you refuse to inhabit. And notice, if you look carefully, that the person you are idealizing is often not doing anything particularly extraordinary. They are living an ordinary life with ordinary limitations, ordinary contradictions, and ordinary confusions. The extraordinary quality is coming from you. It is being generated by the intensity of the material you are projecting onto them. This is why other people cannot see what you see in them. Other people are seeing the actual person. You are seeing the projection. And the reason the connection feels so uniquely destined is that no one else in the world could feel this way about this person, because no one else in the world is projecting your specific shadow onto them. Carl Jung wrote that the more we deny our own inner life, the more magical the outer world begins to appear. He was not being poetic. He was describing the exact mechanism by which people mistake their own suppressed inheritance for the specialness of another human being. And here is the specific, quiet grief that this material will produce in some of you, and needs to. You have spent a large part of your emotional life worshipping in a temple you built out of your own materials, to a God who was never inside it. That is a real loss. And it is also, once you can see it, the beginning of the only kind of freedom that lasts, because the material is still yours, the temple was always yours, and the presence you were looking for was standing behind you the entire time. If you have followed this line of thought without recoiling, without needing to defend the specialness of the person you have been thinking about, you have already crossed a threshold that most viewers will not cross. This is not a channel for the casually curious. What comes next is the specific moment, the moment Jung called the collapse of the projection, that most people spend their entire life running from, but that is the exact door through which self-awareness enters. There is a moment in every projection when reality intrudes on the fantasy. The person says something the projection would never say. They behave in a way the projection cannot account for. Their real face appears for just a second through the screen you have built in front of them, and you see them, not the projection, them. And what you feel in that moment is not clarity. What you feel is a specific disorienting collapse, because the person on the screen was the person you loved, and this new person, this actual person, is a stranger. Jungian psychology has a precise word for this moment. It calls it the collapse of the projection, and it is one of the most important events a human being can experience. You have felt this moment before, more than once, and you have almost certainly misread it every single time. When the person you idealized finally disappointed you in a way you could not rationalize, your mind interpreted the disappointment as a change in them. It was not. It was the appearance of who they had always been, breaking through the screen you had constructed. The disappointment you felt was not their betrayal. It was the sudden confrontation with the fact that you had been in relationship with your own shadow all along, and that the shadow was now being asked to reintegrate. And here is what makes the collapse so painful, and why most people flee from it. When the projection falls, you are not just losing the person. You are losing the specific version of yourself that could only exist while the projection was intact. Because the projection was carrying pieces of you, the tenderness, the possibility, the aliveness, and the moment the screen falls, all of that material comes rushing back toward you, and you have nowhere to put it. Most people at this moment do exactly one thing. They rebuild the screen on a different person. The projection reassembles, the pieces get outsourced again, and the cycle repeats until the next collapse. But there is another option, and it is the option Jung spent his life describing. When the projection collapses, you can allow the pieces to come home. You can sit with the sudden, disorienting return of your own material, and instead of scrambling to hang it on the next available human being, you can begin the specific work of holding it inside yourself. This is not comfortable. It is one of the most uncomfortable acts a person can perform, but it is the only act that ever actually ends the pattern. And once you have performed it, even once, the entire structure of your emotional life begins to reorganize around a self that is no longer leaking its own possibility into strangers. Feel this for a moment. Imagine, 6 months from now, that the compulsive thinking about that person has quieted, not because you forced it to, but because you finally understood what it was. You wake up, and your first thought is not about them. Your first thought is about your own life. The depth you kept locating in them is now something you can locate in yourself, on your own recognizance, without needing them to reflect it back to you. The intensity you kept assigning to their specialness has been redirected into the specific, quiet work of becoming a person who no longer needs an external screen to feel the shape of what is inside you. That is what individuation actually produces, not the absence of longing, the relocation of longing to its correct address. The work of reclaiming a projection is precise, and it can be done. Jungian shadow work is not mysticism. It is a specific inner practice, and once you learn its shape, you can perform it in real time on any pattern of romanticization that has been running in your life. The practice begins with a single act. You take the list of qualities that make the person you have idealized feel extraordinary, and you stop asking whether they possess those qualities. You start asking whether you do, and whether you have been forbidden by conditioning, by shame, by early wounding, from claiming them as your own. If you keep romanticizing depth, you have depth. If you keep romanticizing confidence, there is confidence somewhere in your unlived life. If you keep romanticizing artists, wanderers, mystics, or the specific kind of person who lives with a certain intensity, you have those capacities inside you, waiting to be developed. The person you have been obsessing over is not the model of what you want to have. They are the mirror of who you have not yet allowed yourself to be. Every projection you have ever run has been a private map drawn by your own psyche of the exact next step in your development. And the reason projection keeps generating obsession is that your unconscious is trying over and over to give you the map. Once you understand this, the entire experience of magnetic attraction transforms. When someone activates that specific pull in you, you no longer take it as a signal that you must have them. You take it as a signal that a piece of your own psyche is asking to be reclaimed. You do not necessarily leave the situation. You do not necessarily change your behavior in an obvious way, but internally, everything reorganizes. The energy that was flowing out toward them into the projection begins to flow back into you, into the development of the actual qualities you were outsourcing. This is emotional detachment in its most misunderstood and most beautiful form. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the withdrawal of feeling from the screen and its restoration to the self. And here is where the deepest discomfort of this material lives, and where I need to name it directly. The reason most people never do this work is not that they cannot understand it. The reason is that reclaiming your projections requires you to become the specific version of yourself that you have been asking other people to be for you. You have been waiting for someone to see you the way you refuse to see yourself, love you the way you refuse to love yourself, and value you the way you refuse to value yourself. And no external person will ever do that job well enough, because it was never their job. The moment you can accept this without collapsing into shame, you have crossed the threshold that Jung called the beginning of individuation, and everything on the other side of it is a different life. Some of you are feeling something shift as this lands. That shift is not a mood. That shift is the specific psychological event of a projection loosening. Do not distract yourself out of it. Sit with it. The ones who continue to listen past this moment without needing to reach for their phone or return to the fantasy they came here carrying are the ones who have already begun the real work. That work is not available to everyone. It is available to the ones who are built to eventually see. The rest of what remains is for you. Once you have withdrawn a single projection, something permanent changes in the way you see. You do not become suspicious of every attraction. You do not become clinical or distant from the beauty of other people. What happens is subtler and more powerful. You begin to see human beings in their actual dimensions, not larger than themselves, not smaller, actual size. And you notice with a strange, quiet astonishment that actual size is more interesting than the inflated versions you used to construct. Real people are more mysterious than projections. Real people cannot be exhausted by a fantasy because reality is always deeper than what the mind assembles. This is what individuation actually looks like from the outside. You stop chasing the specific psychological event of the collapse, the disappointment, the disillusionment, the ache, and you start living in the specific psychological state of clear sight. The people in your life become people rather than roles. The connections you form become connections with actual human beings rather than with the versions of yourself you had hidden inside them. And the strangest, quietest change is that you become genuinely interested in other people for the first time, because you are finally meeting them, rather than meeting your own reflection in them. And now the reversal beneath the reversal. The problem was never that you were seeing them wrong. The problem was that you were seeing yourself wrong, and the projection was your psyche's attempt to correct the misperception by hanging your unclaimed self on someone visible. The romanticization was not a mistake. It was the wisdom of your unconscious, trying every available strategy to return you to your own material. When you finally receive the material directly, without the intermediary of another person, the projections stop. Not because you disciplined them into stopping, but because they no longer have work to do. That is the shape of a finished piece of shadow work, not effortful, complete. Which brings us back to the shape I told you. In the opening minutes, you had been drawing in the air for years around every person you have romanticized. That shape has a name. It is the shape of your own unlived self. Every attribute you have hung on the people who mesmerized you has been a coordinate on the map of who you were supposed to become. You did not romanticize them. You were being shown, through the specific magnetism of the wrong direction, the exact right direction. The projection was not a mistake. It was a message, and the message was always the same. The person you have been chasing was never them. The person you have been chasing was you. So here is the truth that you could not have received in the opening minutes of this video, because you had not yet made the journey that would let you hear it. You have not been failing at love. You have been running the exact program Jung described for people whose inner development has been arrested by conditioning, wounding, or unfinished self-awareness. Every romanticization has been an attempted return. Every obsession has been a piece of your own psyche trying to come home through the only door your defenses would leave open, the door of another person. The pattern was not a flaw. It was your unconscious refusing to give up on you, and the moment you understand that, the shame of the pattern dissolves, and the work of ending it becomes possible. You do not have to stop loving people. You do not have to become guarded, cold, or emotionally distant in the shallow sense the phrase is usually meant. What you have to do is claim, one piece at a time, the material you have been outsourcing. You have to let the depth you kept locating in others live in you. You have to let the intensity you kept assigning to others belong to you. You have to become, in your own life, the person you have been waiting for someone else to be. This is the beginning of what Jungian psychology calls the sovereign self, and it is the only foundation from which real relationship with another human being becomes possible. Because you cannot meet another person while you are still projecting. You can only meet your own material dressed in their face. Picture the version of you that has lived inside this shift for a year. You meet a new person, and the old activation still happens. The specific pull, the magnetism, the sense that they are carrying something extraordinary. But now, instead of losing yourself into the projection, you feel the pull and you recognize it. You quietly note the qualities that are lighting up inside you, and you understand them as a message about your own next step. You engage with the person as they are, not as your screen has assembled them. You allow the connection to be whatever it actually is, rather than the fantasy your unconscious tried to make it. And people begin to notice something in you they cannot name. They notice that when you look at them, you seem to actually see them rather than through them. That quality, once developed, becomes the specific gravity that draws real relationships toward you and dissolves the false ones on contact. If this reached the part of you it was meant to reach, drop the word reclaimed in the comments, not as a promise to me, but as a declaration to yourself. Every projection you have ever run belongs back inside you. This is the first act of taking it home. This is not a channel for casual viewing. This is a slow initiation into the psychology the rest of the world was never given access to, and the ones who stay are the ones who were built to eventually walk through this door. If you have felt, at any point in the last 30 minutes, that a hidden part of you was finally being addressed in language it recognized, subscribe. Not because you owe me anything, because the projection you loosened tonight will try to reassemble in the morning, and the next video is going to give you the specific tools to keep it loose, and the one after that is going to build on the one before it, until the entire structure of how you see other people has been rebuilt from the inside. Sovereign minds do not accumulate information, they compound individuation. This is where that compounding happens, and whatever you do, don't stop now. The on-screen video matters more than you think. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.